Are we're collating them for everybody?
Oh, okay. You just want us to take one.
Let me try that out.
You want just for us?
Good morning.
Oh, okay.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Mr. Brown is ready. We'll call the meeting of
One
the
set.
Kane County Agricultural Committee to order. Do you realize we're the only county that has this?
So where are you going in this?
102 counties in the state.
I'd say it's a good
We're
distinction.
always leading the way. Okay, we need a unanimous consent to approve the minutes. Miss Bates is the only one that can't hear.
Gotta take roll first.
Oh, roll call. They don't say roll call. They don't say it here.
Brown,
Brown here.
Froz, Copy,
Opie's present.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
All right.
Sanchez,
Sanchez here.
Allen.
Here,
You have quorum.
Shepro present.
Jeffro.
Did you recognize Copey?
Yeah, we did.
Thank you very much. Mr.
So we need a unanimous consent to approve the minutes.
Brown will ask for unanimous
Mr.
consent.
Brown does that. Mr. Sanchez seconds.
I don't think you need a second.
You
Just-
don't?
No.
Okay, we're
No.
going to approve the minutes unless somebody objects.
Thank you.
Okay? Is there public comment? Seeing none? We'll move on to Steve Arnold, who's still passing out propaganda. Propaganda.
Mr. Kenyon Shepro, would you say propaganda for me?
Okay, propaganda. You want to,
Good morning. I apologize for my tardiness and my late propaganda distribution. I have given to the committee and the staff 3 items of information. The first is the most colorful and is relevant to some of what Mr. Tansley, I believe, will be talking about today. But it was also shared with county board and staff, I believe, on Friday of last week. We sent out to local government information in a publication we call LINK, Local Information News and Know-How. And this issue was primary about the value that livestock adds to local economies. The page that you have in front of you this morning is Kane County specific. So I encourage you to take a look at it at your leisure. And if you missed the link publication, I do have a copy of that. I just have one. It's about a 14-page publication, but I can circulate that this morning or send it out again on demand if anybody would like to see it. The second handout this morning is about a Live Local food conference in Peoria. I did say that like a question, I believe. I think it's in Peoria. East Peoria, yes. So it's a conference by the Farm Bureau in partnership with the Illinois Farmers Market Association. And again, you can look through the release and see a little bit about what's going to be on the agenda for that conference. It's a conference that complements the conference that the county is doing in McHenry next week. And then the third thing that I handed out is just a release that went to newspapers today. We will begin our 3rd decade of shopping sprees on Monday, next Monday, at the Batavia Jewel Wasco, where Senator DeWitt and Representative Ness will participate in a shopping spree to benefit the Salvation Army of St. Charles and the D300, District 300 schools food pantry. A couple other things I would like to cover real quickly. Kind of quietly last week, we distributed information to local meat processors, small processors, so not to the Smithfield Foods of this world, but to small meat processors about hazard analysis and critical control points training and certification. The Illinois Farm Bureau has developed a program, a pilot project in cooperation with it's one of the universities in Texas, and now it escapes me which one it is. But what we're doing is offering some online training and certification in HACCP in an effort to try to encourage more small local meat processing. So we reached out to some of the smaller meat processors in Kane County, including some of the meat cutters in the grocery stores. And we're in the process of evaluating at what level these businesses need certification, and whether it comes through the health department or whether it comes through the Food and Drug Administration or comes from the federal level, in the hopes that we can offer that training in an online format so that those businesses don't have to send employees for a couple of days to take training off site. If this is successful on a statewide basis, the Illinois Farm Bureau is interested in doing it on a local basis and thinks that Kane County would be a great place to do that in person on a local basis. So I'll be talking to Matt and Janice about that after we've gone through the first line of statewide training. Just a few other announcements. This kind of complements what Jody is going to talk about this morning. We offer water testing for well water 2 times a year, and we do have water testing for our members who can come in and pick up water test kits from the Farm Bureau, the Soil and Water Conservation District, beginning tomorrow and going through March the 7th. We are receiving right now college scholarship applications, and we just returned from our annual Governmental Affairs Leadership Conference in Springfield, where we had an opportunity to talk about the issues in this year's session of the General Assembly that are important to farmers, and to meet with our local legislators in a statewide legislative reception. And I believe that's about all I have to report on, Mr. Kenyon.
Any questions, Stephen? How was that, Mr. Brown?
No, go ahead.
How was the attendance at the reception?
Attendance was, it was okay. I would estimate that we may have seen a third of the members of the General Assembly, and Kane County was pretty typical of that also. And excuse me. And it's difficult as everybody gets back into the swing of in-person attendance. We did not host this conference in 2021. It was a virtual conference. And when we do host this conference in Springfield, we're very aware of the fact that we are one of only a number of associations on any given evening that is hosting conferences and receptions for legislators. There were at least 3 others going on, the Illinois Bankers Association being probably the largest conference taking place at the same time as our Farm Bureau conference.
I know it's a pretty, we have a lot of legislators that represent Kane County more than others. So we usually are able to see 1 or 2. And it's when we want to do legislative outreach, it's easier if they know who you are, you know, and we've got some good people in Kane County. Linda Holmes, Castro. And that makes a difference.
If you will indulge me, we are planning a legislative reception for our local legislators in early April. And I've not found the source yet. But I'm actually curious as to whether the county's GIS information system could provide maps of the new legislative districts, so that when we have the public on site in April, they can get a better look at where these legislative district boundaries are drawn.
Those are available and ready for you. You can look at them online right now. And if just let us know and we'll make sure we get the link to you.
Thank you.
You talk to Roger Farnstock, he'll shoot you to the right place. Now, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to compliment the Farm Bureau for holding the food event at the Jewel in Batavia. I attended last year's event, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a total of just under $3,000 worth of food that the two contestants collected and donated to a food pantry. And so I think it's, great that the Farm Bureau organizes this, and I think it's great that the Batavia Jewel participates in it, because it's $3,000 worth of food that's going to some good cause.
And I have to say that Suzanne Ness runs extensively. I mean, literally runs. So Don DeWitt is going to have have to get some exercise, going to have to get into training a little bit.
It's pretty fun to watch because they just go through and throw food in a basket, but you can only have so many of each item. You can't go to the liquor aisle or the meat aisle.
No meat, no.
I was thinking about the caviar aisle.
No, the caviar, right. But it's really exciting to see that. I hope that we had entertainment a couple times in the Batavia High School band or something like that. But it's a good time. We have fun giving money away, right, Stephen?
That is correct.
Just love it. Okay. Northern Ally Food Bank. I see the young lady there.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I just have a short update. This month we have 4 distributions in Kane County, 3 of which already occurred. We served over 1,200 households. We have 1 more distribution coming up this weekend, and so we hope to serve a lot more neighbors. We have seen an increase throughout our counties of neighbors in need of food. So we're definitely building more mobiles in Kane County. And yeah, we're always in need of volunteers. Right now, it's been a struggle with the weather. And so if you know anybody, family, friends who are either in need of food or would love to volunteer, they can go to our website and check out those distribution dates.
How many food pantries do you supply food for? Besides,
So we have over 900 partnering agencies. That it's food pantries, soup kitchens, child nutrition programs. We have over 900 partnering agencies.
Chairman.
I have a question specifically to Kane County, please. I understand that 900, that is not just in Kane County. That's who you serve altogether. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Throughout our 13 counties.
Okay. But specifically to Kane, it's my understanding that due to the cost of inflation, there are more families who would necessarily not need your services are now reaching out to you because they can't afford the food. I know my own personal food bill has, by the same thing, and has gone up. So what is the impact that you have seen due to the cost of inflation? I think food has gone up, what, 7%?
Yes,
7 to 10%.
Yeah, we've definitely seen an increase of neighbors coming out to our distributions, and we're working to build up those distributions. sadly, at one of our current distributions that we had, we did have to turn away about 50 households, and that was because we ran out of food, and we had built it up higher, and so now we're working with our team and our mobile market team who does these distributions to increase the number of food we are providing for our neighbors, because we've seen a lot more neighbors coming out to our distributions. So it's definitely made an impact on our neighbors. I can share specific numbers with you all at the next meeting about how much more we've seen an increase.
That would be very important for us because we want to understand what areas in our counties is truly affected
Yeah.
so that we can pivot and try to help them.
Yes, I will
Bates,
share that.
You have the mobile truck that also goes out to areas where people can't drive,
Yes.
maybe the seniors.
Yes, so we do
That's-
have a program called My Pantry Express, which does do deliveries now through DoorDash. We have partnered with DoorDash, so we've seen that be very helpful, especially for our seniors who can't drive. We're able to distribute food directly to their households.
Very good. And how about the backpack program? How's that being
Yeah.
sustained?
Yeah, so the backpack program is we partner with our elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, and the students are able to take food for the weekend. So on a Friday, they'll pack up lunch, breakfast. They'll be given lunch, breakfast, and dinner for the weekend, and then when they come back on Monday, they'll get their bag again. Filled with more food for the weekend. And they also provide like snacks and after school meals for students who are coming from low income families or are just in need of more help. Mhm.
Could you give, when next month, could you give us those numbers as well so we know
Yes.
what school districts are impacted?
Yes, of course.
Bates, please. Bates?
We used to participate here in a food drive with the county.
Mhm.
We have to, it was a pretty big deal until 8 years ago.
Well, we are speaking right now.
I'm challenging you.
I'm ready. I challenge you back, sir. You
Yeah,
are
Good thing to
currently,
do.
you are the chair of
currently-
this.
Yeah, currently we do have one of our biggest distribution that we do have in Kane County is at the Elgin Community College, where we serve over 800 households. We have that once a month, and then we have slightly smaller distributions throughout Kane County. We've been in Elgin. We will be in Montgomery this weekend, and then we've also been to the Centennial House closer to Aurora. So we're trying to get areas throughout Kane County. Yeah.
I think Easter time is coming, so we need to have an Easter drive.
Mavis Bates would like to talk.
Thank you.
You got a question or a comment?
Just a question. So I thought that the Northern Illinois Food Bank worked mostly through other agencies, but it sounds like you're doing a lot direct to individuals. So you do both, or
Yes.
is that where there's not an agency that can help, or?
Yes, so we do have we do both. We have direct distributions and then we have partnering distributions. So we work with our agencies to get food out to the neighbors, but we also have our direct to neighbor distributions, and so which is great because perhaps sometimes our neighbors can't make it to our food pantry distributions, and then we provide them with the other option of those direct distributions. But yes, we do both, partnering with our agencies and then directly to neighbors as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
If there's no other questions, are you done?
Yes, that's all.
Shirley? Then
Thank you.
we'd like to hear from, there's, who's going to first? Jody? Are you first or is Mark? Mr. Van Kerkhoff.
Good morning. Last month, if you recall, staff did a presentation on beekeeping and asked for direction from Development Committee and this committee for developing nuisance level ordinance for the county. If you recall, we had more people in the audience than usual. We had a good turnout from beekeepers and they were eager to both support and assist staff in drafting a language since they know bees and bee language better than we do. So we took them up on that and want to appreciate Charles Lawrence and he reached out to their network of beekeeping folks and they actually had a meeting themselves and crafted recommendations and provided staff with additional documentation. And that all is reflected in the text amendment that you have this morning. So I want to recognize and credit them for that. Additionally, this text amendment draft went to the Kane County Farm Bureau Board. I attended their meeting. They were also supportive of this text and want to make sure as we do this, we underscore both Kane County's recognition of the invaluable need for bees and pollination, and yet also feel that it's time for a tool that helps us in cases of extreme beekeeping where it's actually hurting the bees and the community. So that's what these reflect. Be happy to answer any specific questions you might have on the text amendments, but following that would be asking for you, as the development committee did, pass this on to executive committee and the full board for.
Mr. Brown has got a question.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. And when you first brought this to us a month ago, I was a little, what's the right word, skeptical or hesitant to see it because more government regulation. But having the bee community step up and work with you on this and your cooperation, your team's cooperation, I think it's probably one of the better ordinances I've seen come out and it's just very well done. So thank you for your work on this.
Oh, thank you. And again, I just have to credit our beekeepers. They
Right.
really stepped up. I think it's a great way for community to work with government to come to a good solution.
Last
Question,
couple
Shepro?
weeks, I got a book in my box and a bee book, which Jody returned to me. I loaned it to her years ago. And I forgot. It's the coolest book. Do you realize there's 20,000 different varieties of bees? That's a lot.
Bees are amazing. It's
Without bees, we would not have what we have. We wouldn't have flowers. We wouldn't have pumpkins, things like that. No almonds.
and every bee's got a specific job. You got your queen bee, you got your worker bees. I can't name them all, but I mean, they've all got a specific job that they do.
They're really organized, like ants. They're it's nature is good.
You do not want to be in your bonnet, though.
Well, no. Anybody else? Any other comments?
That's
We have
very
to-
bad to have a bee in your bonnet.
Comment, Shepro?
Shepro's got to be in his bonnet.
No, but I wanted to point out that the greatest detective in history, Sherlock Holmes, when he retired to Sussex and became a beekeeper and allegedly wrote the definitive work on the segregation of the queen.
Yeah, thank you. But there's always an educational moment with Ken Shepro. And this is something we can take home.
Can
Good
you
little
realize you
conversation.
use a pretend person, right?
Yep,
Mr. Chair,
sure.
Brown speaking. I notice we don't have an ordinance number on this, but I would move for the approval of this ordinance.
I'll second.
Mr. Sanchez seconds. Is there discussion?
Comment, Shepro. I believe it will be given an ordinance number when it reaches the county board for a final vote.
Correct, it gets booked.
Okay, is there,
I have one quick question, Shepard.
uh-oh.
This is not facetious. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, but I'm wondering, Mark, what do you envision would be the workload of the development department from this ordinance when it's adopted?
I don't anticipate a substantial increase in the workload at all.
Thank you.
You satisfied? Maybe he wants to be a part-time inspector.
He wants to be Sherlock Holmes and he's got
Yes.
a big lot. He can do bees. and
Well,
study
he
them.
wrote about it. I guess he kept them.
I'm talking about you, sir.
Well, did Perry Mason do anything with bees?
Not that I'm aware of, but there is how would I put it? I believe there is a prohibition against county board members having any other office other than a member of the Board of Review. So unless the bees are applying for tax breaks, I think that would be precluded. But you never know what the future will bring.
Are we ready? Mr. Brown says, move it along. We're
Let's
ready to
move it
vote.
along.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
Mrs. Allen, Mr. Brown's in a hurry, so quick.
I actually have the bonnets that the bees could be in. So I just wanted to compliment staff because of what Mr. Brown said about the government shows up at your door saying we're trying to help you, and people just say, please just leave us alone. That's the best help you can give. And I'm sure that all of us attend events in the summer where people have gone to some trouble to try and draw yellow jackets away from the crowds of people. And it's possible to do that. There are those nifty glass containers, and they pull the yellow jackets in without disturbing the population at all. And so I just want to compliment staff on being receptive to the community most involved, saying, if you want to help us, great, but listen to what kind of help we need. You don't want to have the guy who got stung by a yellow jacket saying Kane County needs to have a bee regulation. So I really appreciate, Mark, that you went to the trouble and were receptive and tried to make this something that works for everybody. Because as Mr. Kenyon says, those bees are really important. Thank you.
Mr. Shepro, you can research that and see if we're also leading the way in bee ordinances. We're ready to vote. Roll call.
Brown,
Brown, yes.
Copey, Leonard,
Leonard, yes. Copy belated, yes vote. Thank you.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Allen,
Alan, yes.
Kenyon.
Yes. It's
Was
passed.
that a
It'll
pun
move.
from Mr. Copey?
What'd you say?
He said he belated.
Okay,
Believe it or not.
okay. We're ready to move on? Are you done? Jody Walnut, water testing.
Thank you. Is this not, I don't think this one's working.
Who knew that guy is?
That one's
Got
better.
bored.
Can you hear me? Yeah, good. We're excited to be here this morning to present to the committee the results from our 2021 sampling of our agricultural streams in Kane County. I want to give credit to Rob Linke of our staff who did an amazing amount of work and literally a lot of the heavy lifting. Some of the bridges we were off of were close to 20 foot to the water surface. And he was able to lift those samples out safely for us in those instances. And I also appreciate him in his work in putting together all these numbers. Let me advance my slide here. There we go. So just as a bit of review on what we're trying to accomplish here, we have the Fox River Study Group who's doing a lot of sampling in our urban streams as well as the Fox River. However, we have a large data gap when we get to our drain tiles and our rural watersheds in Kane County. We wanted to specifically look at the nutrient loadings from those streams and tile systems and develop sub-watershed plans for our farmers that they could implement practices that would be best for their area. I want to preface kind of this data. You know, we do only have 1 year's worth of data here, but we wanted to get it in front of the committee just to give you an idea of where we're at with the collection of this information. So one of the challenges that we had in 2021 was that it was an extremely dry year. When we submitted the grant application to Janice Hill for funding for this project, we actually incorporated 14 different sample events and with the intent of doing the monthly sampling at the same time the Fox River Study Group did their sampling. And then we were going to have 2 additional sampling events that occurred during a high flow time period. But as you see from the graph in the slide, we only encountered low flows during the year of 2021. So we've submitted a grant request to Janice for funding for this coming year in light of the fact that many of our numbers are based on low flows and we don't really have an idea of what happens in high flows. This is great data. A lot of times people doing sampling don't get the opportunity to get those low flow samples. And so there is a benefit to it, but we are still missing that other subset of data. So just a map again, you can see the spots on the right-hand side in Kane County. Those are the locations of all of our sampling locations. There's predominantly on the downstream side of our agricultural areas. So to start with a review of our findings, and this is the bioreactor that is out at the Meisner-Koren Forest Preserve. We were specifically sampling out here because we were, as of last year, the most northern bioreactor in the state of Illinois. McHenry County Farm Bureau did just install one that's further north than ours. So we no longer can take that credit. But our nitrifiers, if you recall, that remove the nitrogen out of the tile water do not operate under a temperature of less than 50 degrees. And so with being one of the northernmost bioreactors in the state, we really wanted to see how many months of the year our bioreactor was working. When you're looking at the numbers in the charts on the PowerPoint, which is in your packet, so you can see those numbers a lot better in the packet. But the grayed out numbers are the detection limit. That means that that was as low as they could detect. So the numbers that we were getting were so low that we weren't able to get a result. We've also highlighted in red the high numbers in each category. So you can quickly see what months of the year we saw the highest readings. So you'll see in this one, this is the water coming in from the tile system out there at Meisner-Koren, coming into the bioreactor on the upstream side. We're seeing about 4 milligrams per liter of nitrogen as nitrate. The second chart is the downstream end. So this is what's coming out of the bioreactor. And you can quickly see with the red line, as soon as we drop below the 50 degrees Fahrenheit, we quickly lose any effective treatment in that bioreactor. So really, it's those key summer months, June, July, August. We have an anomaly in September, obviously, and then on October, the bioreactor was basically taking the nitrate in the tile water down to 0. However, we received very little treatment during those other fall and winter months. The following slides are our tile sampling. So these do not have the bioreactor treatment ahead of them, and they're in various areas of the county. One interesting fact, and we did not know this when we selected those sites, was that all of our tile sample sites had predominantly been planted with corn. And if you recall, when we had the longer discussion about the Gulf hypoxia and the results that are coming out of some of these studies, there does seem to be quite a bit of difference in the nitrogen loading in those tile systems based on the carbon to nitrogen numbers, which is different when you have corn followed by soybeans or soybeans followed by corn. The numbers are going to vary greatly. And so we didn't get to see any kind of trending in regards to the fact that we had corn on every single one of the fields that we were testing for the nitrogen. But if we continue to test this year, it's likely they'll switch to soy in a lot of those fields. And then we'll be able to potentially see the difference with that C to N ratio. And next year, hopefully we'll see some changes. We did see quite a bit of variation and we have some theories on it, nothing that I'm going to present today. We're going to see if those kind of pan out, but our tile outlet at Romkey Road was trending upwards of 8 milligrams per liter of nitrogen in the summer. And what's interesting is that the bioreactor we just saw was at 4, almost half of what that was. And then if we go down to our next tile location, which is the US 30 at Big Rock, we saw similar high around 8 milligrams per liter, but then we also saw periods where there was basically non-detect of the nitrogen. So that one's kind of all over the board. That's quite a large tile system. And so we don't know if there was some surface influence on that one as well as the tile. But if we continue on to our Lasher Road tile, we see significantly lower nitrogen in that tile system than the other systems. So we've got the high ones at 8, we've got the bioreactor at 4, and then this one is trending down towards 2 and 3. And so we're going to be looking at the field practices in those areas and the crop rotation as well to see if we can find some trends in that regards. The next sampling results are on Mill Creek in the vicinity of Fox Mill. This one's actually upstream of Fox Mill in the Wasco Sanitary District irrigation plant. And this one is interesting in the fact that there's always been this discussion that septic areas are contributing greatly to this loading in Kane County. And so one of the theories that we wanted to make sure was crossed off of our rural areas was, is there a contribution from septic areas? And based on this data, there's a significant number of residential rural subdivisions that are upstream of this location on Mill Creek. And we are just not seeing the numbers that are coming to fruition, that the septic areas in Kane County are a major contributor of nutrients. The second one is actually downstream of the Wasco Sanitary District irrigation fields. This one, again, is very interesting in the fact that there's been arguments that with the irrigation area, then the nutrients are going into the groundwater and then discharging into the stream. Again, this does not prove that theory out. It's actually lower than upstream of the Wasco Sanitary District plant. And as we continue on, we're looking at Blackberry Creek tributary at Route 47. We're not really seeing on those low flow numbers any significant nutrient loading in that area. And it's pretty consistent with Blackberry Creek at Finley Road. The Union Ditch at County Line Road has a lot more of upstream agricultural areas and tile outlets that go into that. So we're trending a little bit higher in that area. And Big Rock Creek, which is that discharge from that Big Rock tile that had numbers all over the place. We're also seeing kind of numbers all over the place at the creek as well. So conclusions and future work, where are we at? The nitrogen levels sampled in the tiles obviously vary greatly. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of numbers we get in 2022. The overall nutrient levels in our rural surface water were low during during the study. However, we also were seeing very low flows. So it'll be very interesting to see if we have some higher flows this year, what kind of numbers we get for nitrogen and phosphorus. Across the board, our phosphorus numbers were very low, which is one of the major issues on the Fox River. And so what happens is that with the way our agricultural fields are with the tile systems and being tile drained, we are going to predominantly in low flow situations see nitrogen over phosphorus. Phosphorus is a lot of times contributed with soil erosion coming off the land surface and bank erosion in your streams and creeks. And because we were seeing such low flows in 2021, it's not surprising that our phosphorus levels were so low. We're also in the next step going to be starting to compare our rural numbers with the testing that was done on those same creeks for the Fox River Study Group. We also note that our bioreactor performed really well during those summer months, but the numbers quickly dropped off as the temperatures became cooler. We also concluded that there's not a major contribution from our septic areas or from our spray irrigation fields of wastewater based on, again, the low flows. It'll be interesting to see if those numbers change during a wetter period. And as I mentioned earlier, that we would like to continue sampling if there's funding available starting in March of 2022 to try to obtain those higher flow samples and different croppage on those tile systems. So I'm available for any questions. Thanks.
Are there any questions, Mr. Brown?
Not a question maybe, but a comment. I think maybe it's a good thing that you just had low flow all of 2021. Because now if you have a normal year in 2022 where you got some high flow, you'll have some real good data.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has a rural well, but it's kind of nice to send in a sample. Just
Copy, please.
Copy. Mr. Copy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Hey, Jody, how many years have we been doing the sampling? I know that about 20 years ago, Kane County went around and drilled some test wells, but I don't know how long has the actual nitrogen, what do you call that, a biogenerator? What was that term you used in regards to the collection of data? How far back can we go with the data, and what are you seeing as a trend?
We did search for similar data historically, and really of our rural agricultural surface waters, there's not any great data that's out there currently. So to answer your question, I would say we've been doing this for 1 year. The Fox River Study Group has been doing the testing on the urban section of our stream as well as the Fox River. I want to say going on to almost 20 years. So there's a significantly greater amount of data available for those surface waters in the urban area versus the rural area. In regards to wells specifically, we've been working with Illinois State Water Survey on the 64 wells spread throughout Kane County for about 15 years. And that is tracking a lot of chloride issues that are going up in those shallow rural drinking water wells. And we do have a grant application into the ARPA committee to do the sampling that would be due in 2024.
Thank you. I have another question, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
All right.
Thank you. Jody, on the samples that we collect, is there a long-term storage capacity on those, or do they deteriorate over time?
The samples have to be returned to the lab in several hours after they're taken. And so once we collect the samples, they're immediately driven to the lab in Naperville for analysis. So we get the data from those samples about a week after we drop them off. And the samples are, once they test them, because there is reagent in the bottles that we're using, once they test them, the water is disposed of.
Any other questions?
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Bates, please.
Bates?
Did you call those bioreactors?
We have a bioreactor at the Meisner-Koren Forest Preserve that was installed about 4 years ago, correct?
What's a bioreactor?
A bioreactor is a chamber that's filled with wood chips. And it allows the nitrifiers to go into an anoxic without oxygen condition to remove the nitrogen from the tile water. And so the drain tiles in the field out there are directed into the upstream end of this wood chip area. The water flows through the wood chips. The nitrogen is removed and then it comes out as cleaner water.
Okay, that answers my question. I was wondering, was that a test tool or a cleaning tool?
It's a cleaning tool, and it's a practice that's being promoted as a way to remove nitrogen from tile water, which is a major issue in Kane County. And the application of that is difficult because we are so far north that you don't get treatment year round. And so in partnering with the Farm Bureau, we received a grant a couple years ago to install that bioreactor as a demonstration project and an educational piece for our farmers who might be considering installing a similar type treatment system.
Thank you. So all this data we've been looking at, that was nitrogen, correct?
Yes, because of the fact that we had so low of numbers, as you see in those charts, all those numbers that are grayed out are below the detection level.
Yeah.
The nitrogen was the major item that a lot of the samples, we saw positive samples for. Again, as Mr. Brown points out, it might be very interesting to see with the higher flows. We might have a lot more hits on phosphorus. And so we might be seeing a lot more graphs for phosphorus if that does hold out this year.
Because phosphorus is the most loading nutrient, isn't it?
Not necessarily from our farm area. It might be nitrogen, and certainly nitrogen is a major contributor to the Gulf hypoxia issue.
Okay, thanks a lot for letting me ask all those questions. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
One more question. So if you had a bioreactor on your property, what type of maintenance do you have to do? So, I mean, like every so often you have to change these wood chips out, and what do you do with these wood chips? Is it a issue?
Yeah, after time, the wood chips do need to be changed out. They're looking about 15 to 20 years at this time. So it's not like an annual type of thing, but once they break down, then your treatment it'll degrade and you start seeing those numbers starting to go up. And at that point, you probably need to pull out your wood chips and you can use them as fertilizer. I mean, they're basically broken down mulch at that point.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move along. Janice Hill.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Jody. Oh, this is not mine. I sent you that one. Yep. That'll be Matt coming up. I will be
Oh, we
talking
got
about climate smart incentives.
putting Matt in front of you.
You can do that if Blair hasn't changed it out.
No, now we're climate smart.
No,
incentives.
he's fast. So there we go. I've been before you before to talk about the Donnelly Foundation grant. It's a project that we worked on for a while to get submitted for funding. And I'm very happy to tell you that Kane County is a recipient of $100,000 from the Donnelly Foundation for the project Climate Smart Incentives. And it's going to be a fast moving project because this project final report, you can see when it's going to be due. So let me tell you a little bit about remind you what the request was. But first, wanted to remind you too about the Donnelly Strategy. And this was the first year they've moved into working with agriculture. They've been primarily in natural areas, natural resource funding. But because of our reputation in farm programming, they were very generous with us. We want to make sure that our response in this project meets the things that they're looking for, which you can see the strategies there that they're targeting for their efforts. Our category that we submitted fell into two primary areas: fundraising and engagement. All the great work that we do costs money to do. And so we know, although we've relied quite a bit on riverboat funds, as well as state and primarily federal funds for farmland protection, local food work, water sampling, all those different things cost quite a bit of money to do and are expensive. So we need to broaden our funding options. And so they understood that, and the fact that fundraising also involves partnership and engagement. And so that effort as well is something that we want to broaden to be able to do that. So that's probably about half of the work that we do, and we hope that that will then benefit more funding. The second half has to do with climate smart, what we had titled climate smart incentives for farmers. In the experience that we've had working with farmers through the program, we know that farmers need more information first to be able to improve practices on their farm. They want that information. There's a lot out there. So sorting through that and bringing resources to Kane is really important. Second thing is money. So in order to have better soil and water quality, we know that farmers in our area generally are looking at two things: cover crops and nutrient management, to help have results of better soil quality and water along the line. So, and that's a solution that will work primarily in Illinois. You'll see a lot of programming on that. But the question becomes, with whom, how much, who are the partners, and how do you shrink that cost so that it's affordable for farmers? That is the question that we would like to examine for this project before we create any kind of program formally. Also, to keep in mind, conservation incentives are a required element of our farmland protection cases going forward for RCPP. So if you're going to work with our new program, you need to have some kind of practices. And that's not something that farmers don't want to do. It's something they do want to do. They just need to make sure their costs are covered, that they're doing trials, they're allowed to experiment with that, and that we know what the costs are, and we can help them close the gap on the funding. And so those are the things we're going to be doing. I wanted to let you know that we don't have a budget amendment. The money is, we received the first $50,000 and that money is in the account, haven't spent it yet. But we want to develop programming on those two categories before we bring you the budget amendment, so that you can see what the programming is before we actually adjust the budget formally. And we were in that process right now. There's a lot of educational events as well on these topics right now. This is the announcement for Soil Health Week coming up, and have the link there if you're interested. And then also an important event coming up for Northern Illinois farmers. We are a partner in this, and so I help to develop the program. We have two guest speakers that are going to be very interesting. Austin Omer from Illinois Farm Bureau. I've worked with him before. He's excellent. And he will also be introducing Andrew Margonaut from University of Illinois, who will be talking about some of these same topics on soil quality and carbon capture and what that all means for farmers. Then we have lots of other speakers as well. And most importantly, farmers that are doing the work on the ground and how they're using federal incentives. So not just experts, not from the field, but also experts who are doing the work, those farmers. So it's a free event. If you know any farmers, specifically for the farmer audience, and if you know of any farmers that would like to attend, Steve has been very helpful in getting this word out for us from Farm Bureau, but let us know.
Are there any questions or comments?
Bates, please.
Okay, Mavis?
So I got a little confused, Janice. So we're going to get $100,000 and we're going to give that to the farmers to help them with the cost of cover crops and things like that. Is that kind of the plan?
Well, probably not all of it will go directly to farmers because half of it will be for fundraising and engagement. So that will be, we'll work with consultants to develop a fundraising program for all of the work that we do. That will include all aspects of fundraising from the smallest. We've talked about crowdfunding here before, as well as corporate incentives and contributions. The
Okay,
full
that's
gamut.
okay, I get it. That's what you said. Use
Yeah.
some money to get more money. What
Correct.
about no-till? Is that high up on that list of cover
Well, I
crops
will
and
tell,
nutrient management?
I'm not an expert, but I will tell you what I've heard from the experts. And I will tell you how we will apply it to our program. First of all, each farm will have their own farm plan. It's incentive, not required. So these are farm plans that are developed by the farmers themselves with some soil and water experts. Generally, across the board, the best results come first from cover crops and nutrient management, and then a reduced tillage, not a no-till.
Okay, thanks.
Possibly,
Thank you.
possibly. That's very, very general, but. right.
Okay.
So yeah, about half of that money will probably go directly to farmers and farm resources, and roughly half is going to go toward fundraising.
Cool, thanks.
Farmers are encouraged to buy insurance for their crops. And if you plant a cover crop and you get your application in soon enough, you might get $5 an acre, which is given to your insurance company. So it doesn't go directly to farmers, but it helps us with our bills. But you can always contribute to me directly, so.
Cover crops cost $40 per acre, right, Janice? You were on that call?
Yeah, we were on the Chicago Farmers webinar, listening to Andrew Margonaut and some of the other experts. I've heard that number before. And I mean, the main thing is that the federal incentives don't cover that cost. And we know that all of these transitions and practices cost money. And that's part of what we're going to be measuring, not only the science of the water and soil sampling, but then if a farmer wants to make changes on their farm, what's that true cost? And we know now that there's not that. So who's going to fill in that gap and what that is? And I will say too, it's really important. This is a pilot project and will help us develop permanent funding sources, because that's what's going to be needed. We know that the federal government doesn't cover the full cost of that. So studying all of this, the work that Jody just did, that informs this project. All these are pilots, but we'll eventually need permanent funding.
All right, well.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that it? Is it Debbie Allen?
It is. I just wanted to say congratulations, Janice, once again being out on the cutting edge and looking for money and trying to figure out ways to help. This is what you do that's especially wonderful is the networking. You connect all the dots that you can. You tie everybody together. You find rich people with money and people who are trying to find ways to pay for their cover crops. I just wanted to share an anecdote. One of the programs that my husband enjoys watching is the ones that have to do with zoos. Zoos have allowed television production companies to come in and show what's happening behind the scenes with the animals. And a quote that caught my ear was one of the directors saying, you know, we have these PhDs, but we really have to be careful to keep a lot of old farmers around.
I like that.
Mr. Chair?
Is this Ms. Bates, Mavis?
So if the insurance companies are giving $5 per acre, like a discount, right, for cover crops, does that mean they think that cover crops will help ensure a better crop, cash crop?
Oh,
Well, I would say that our challenges in the Midwest when it comes to climate, and the whole reason that we're addressing this is that we're seeing either extremely dry conditions, like Jody pointed out, or flooding. Those are our two challenges. So I don't think it's as much the result of the crop, it's the process in adapting to climate. Steve Arnold's nodding. Did I do that right?
if you come to the next meeting, you and I can talk about it, Mavis.
Okay.
Yeah, and wanted to also comment with what Mrs. Allen said too, that we, in terms of engagement, watching farmers do the work and watching all this conservation work, the research that Rob's doing, seeing that visually is something that we have in mind. So stay tuned for that. We'll be bringing you more later.
All right, we have to move on because we have a room full of lawyers now. There's another committee after this. So, Matt Tinsley? Tinsley?
Yes, thank you. So I am happy to announce that we have received another smaller grant from Compeer Financial. This is a $5,000 grant that we applied for to do a market assessment, and it's going to be focused on livestock production and the demand for local meat products. I want to thank Steve for sharing some of that economic data on the importance and the impact of the livestock sector in Kane County. It is an important and a significant sector, and we certainly have learned that in recent years from some of the surveys and analysis that we have been conducting. So this market assessment is driven in part by some of the feedback that we received from the regenerative grazing event that we hosted back in October. We did an evaluation as part of that, and we learned that assistance with developing business plans and support for marketing and selling meat products was something that these livestock farmers were interested in. So this was our attempt to provide that level of continued support. Just a couple of quick stats on the livestock sector. In the state of Illinois, there are around 20,000 operations, and in Kane County, we have 181 operations as reported by the last U.S. Census of Agriculture. And I would just note that there are fewer farms, accounting for the fact that you have individual farms that have multiple livestock operations. So you might have, some farms that have a cattle and, chicken operation or hog operation. So you could have a number on one farm, but this just provides kind of a quick breakdown of, what the number of different livestock operations are that we have across the county. We have seen a number of challenges faced by livestock operators. Some of those have existed before the pandemic. Certainly we have a number of smaller scale operators in Kane County, and certainly it can be challenging to compete with the large commercial operations and all of the resources that they have to operate at smaller margins. Another interesting fact that looking at grass-fed beef specifically, that 75 to 80% of sales in the U.S. is from imported product. These were some findings that we gleaned from the Pasture Project that looks at this very in depth. Looking a little bit closer at Kane County, this is some information that we pulled from the last the evaluation that we did as part of the regenerative grazing event, and also the operator survey that we did in 2021. There were a number of operators that lost their sales contracts. A lot of that was due to the instability and changes in the supply chain, and that resulted in some of those contracts being lost. I did know of one hog farm operator that lost a contract that was worth several $1,000s. And another challenge linked with the pandemic, but also just another general challenge for smaller livestock operators is having that access to processing facilities around the region. There's a limited number of facilities. Obviously, a lot of those facilities were shut down and had labor issues during the pandemic, and some of that does persist. But these do tend to fall very heavily on those smaller and more specialized livestock operations. So in terms of what we're going to be looking at with this market assessment, we do, on the first part of this, just have a clear understanding of what the challenges facing these livestock operators is. That's going to help us be able to continue to provide targeted support, sharing information about trainings that address specific challenges that our livestock operators in the county are facing. But what we really want to focus on in terms of the benefit for these operators is to illuminate the market opportunities that might not be entirely obvious or accessible at the moment, just to be able to help them, fully capture the unmet demand out there for local specialty meat products. So we're going to follow the traditional approach that we take with similar projects that we've undertaken in the past. We're going to seek proposals from consultants that would be qualified to provide this type of analysis and engaging farmers to get their feedback and do the appropriate survey and assessments of the market for local meat products. And so the output of this is going to be a report in the form of this assessment that we're going to make available to the county's livestock operators, and hopefully will be a resource to them to better grow and support their businesses. And in conjunction with this, we do have a budget adjustment on the agenda. This is just to receive the funding and adjust the Growing for Kane budget to reflect this $5,000 grant.
So you're moving to that. We can move right to that.
If there are no questions, absolutely.
We have a resolution to.
I think Steve has a question.
My question is whether this assessment will take in dairy, wool, in addition to meat. And when you look at specialty markets, I think there's even some production of some high quality beef like Wagyu beef. That's occurring and maybe occurring on dairy farms.
That is certainly something that we could include if, given the obvious economic impact and benefit of those additional operations. Typically, what we have to consider, though, when we're working with consultants is we usually have to, be prepared to adjust the scope of the assessment that they're going to do based on the funding that we can offer. But that's certainly something that we can include as part of our ask. And then if we have to, negotiate from there, we can prioritize certain topics to look at within that, but we can certainly include that.
I'm just here trying to get you more money, Matt, to expand your scope.
We appreciate that.
Bates, please.
Okay, Ms. Bates.
I won't keep the lawyers waiting too long, but our meat CSA, community supported agriculture farmer, has now started doing his own butchering. Is that something you'll be looking at if these small farms can start doing their own processing?
Yes, that is absolutely something we would want to look at. Yeah, pretty much the whole sequence of the supply chain is something that we want to be able to capture for those local livestock operators.
Okay, great, thanks.
Butchering is regulated and you have to have an inspector to inspect the meat. So there's almost no home butchering done legally.
Oops.
So, and Mr. Van Kerkhoff?
Yeah, I'll just note as I did a development committee, one of the tasks we're looking at this year with our zoning ordinance is to take a fresh look at what is listed as permitted and special uses in the F1 and F2 districts, to refresh those and bring them up to date in terms of what the needs are for our local food growers and producers, and make adjustments in our zoning ordinance that might allow for easier routes for produce stands, limited butchering, that kind of thing within our zoning ordinance. So there's the other regulators, but we're going to make sure we're as friendly as we can be with our zoning ordinance.
So it's an opportunity for Mr. Sanchez to get into. Sanchez meats, he could start a butchering shop. We have to go a long way, maybe 75 miles to find a butcher shop to do this. There's money to be made. Jared, you and Mr. Brown could do that.
We'll need a small loan, Mr. Kenyon.
Yeah. So we need to vote on this resolution. Somebody want to make it? Mr. Brown? Mr. Sanchez?
Leonard moves.
Okay. Is there discussion? Or we're ready to vote?
Brown,
Yes.
Copy,
Copy, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Allen,
Alan, we're always grateful for money.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, we'll move the resolution along. Is there any new business? Seeing none. Motion to, not motion, but
I'll ask for unanimous consent to replace the reports on file.
Mr. Brown puts in unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, there's no except, and we're right up. We got the lawyers. One thing, I have the question today. Where is the location of the bioreactor in Kane County?
Nice and core and forest preserve.
Say it, Deb got it.
Who was that?
She got it.
Who?
Deb.
Deb?
We
Oh,
all know
right.
the answer. It's okay.
That's correct. So you get that Mr. Brown was sent here to make sure he got in line for the prize, and you'll get a jar of honey. Should I put it in your box, Debbie?
That's lovely, but I have a jar of your honey, and as you have
You have to
noticed.
come down there to get it.
All right, thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Sanchez seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.